Ladies and gentlemen, friends, advocates, and warriors of hope. My name is Shea Dease, and I am honored to address you today, not just as an incarcerated peer recovery specialist, but as someone who has walked through the fire of addiction and emerged on the other side, scarred but stronger. I work within the walls of Greensville Correctional Center, located in Jarrett, Virginia, in a mandatory recovery program called the Residential Illicit Drug Use Program, also known as RIDUP. Every day, I look into the eyes of men society has labeled broken, lost, or hopeless. And I see something different. Human beings. Human beings fighting a battle many cannot fathom, shackled not just by the chains, but by a stigma that suffocates their chance at redemption. Today I speak to you with a fire in my soul, a fire ignited by urgency, by injustice, and by the unshakable belief that we must dismantle the stigma surrounding substance use disorder. This stigma is not just a shadow, it is a wall built brick by brick with misunderstanding, judgment, and fear. A wall that separates those struggling with addiction from the empathy, resources, and dignity they deserve. And together, we must tear it down. Stigma is a silent killer. It isolates, it shames, it dehumanizes, and worst of all, it keeps people trapped in cycles of addiction and despair when what they truly need is support, compassion, and access to fair treatment. But today, we begin the work of tearing it down. For far too long, our society has viewed substance use disorder through a distorted lens, one that sees addiction as a moral failing rather than what it truly is, which is a chronic medical condition. Let me ask you this. When someone is diagnosed with asthma, diabetes, or hypertension, do we blame them? Do we call them weak or selfish? Do we turn our backs and say, you did this to yourself? Nah. We research. We fund treatments. We offer casseroles, hugs, and GoFundMe pages. But when it comes to addiction, a chronic, relentless illness rooted in trauma, genetics, and circumstances, we point fingers, we whisper, we punish, we strip away humanity. This hypocrisy must end. Addiction is not a choice. Let me repeat that. Addiction is not a choice. No one wakes up one morning and says, you know what? Today will be the day I'll surrender my family, my freedom, my future to this torment. Just as no one chooses cancer, no one chooses depression, no one chooses heart disease, yet here we are in 2025 with stigma, still seeing substance use disorder as a moral failing rather than what it is, a medical condition. It is a disease recognized by the American Medical Association, a condition that rewires the brain's chemistry and hijacks the ability to make rational choices, and one that demands compassion, science, and systemic support. I know the stigma firsthand. Before I stood in this role, I was trapped in the grip of addiction. I felt the weight of those judgmental stares. I heard the whispers. Why can't he just stop? He's throwing his life away. But what people didn't see was a child who grew up in chaos, a young man who used substances to erase memories of trauma he endured and caused. They didn't see my substance use as a mechanism to numb pain. This pain I didn't yet understand. They didn't see that. They didn't see the why, only the what. And that stigma, it nearly killed me. It tells people you're not worth saving. But here's the truth. Stigma is a liar. It lies to the mother hiding her recovery journey because she's terrified of losing her children. It lies to the veteran self-medicating, PTSD, convinced he's too broken to ask for help. It lies to the teenager overdosing in a gas station bathroom, believing they burned every bridge. And it lies to the incarcerated individual sitting in a cell, braiding a torn sheet into a noose, who actively uses to numb themselves, believing their mistakes are their identity. Stigma isolates, stigma silences, stigma kills. Substance use disorder can affect anyone. It does not discriminate. It does not care about race, background, income level, or social status. It seeps into the lives of good, hardworking people, mothers, fathers, sons, daughters, grandparents, professionals, students, and veterans. Yet, instead of extending a hand to lift these people up, too often we turn our backs. We say things like, they did this to themselves, they just need more willpower. Man, they're not worth saving. But let me tell you something. That stigma can be just as deadly as the addiction itself. When we allow stigma to thrive, we push people further into the shadows. We make them feel unworthy of help. We reinforce the belief that their suffering is their fault. And what happens then? They stop seeking treatment. They stop believing in the possibility of change. They stop hoping. But hope is everything. Even in the darkest moments, even when addiction has stolen so much, there is always a flicker of hope. And sometimes all a person needs is for someone, just one person, to acknowledge that their struggles is real, that their pain matters, that their life is worth fighting for. That one moment of kindness, of understanding, can be the difference between recovery and a return to use, between life and death. So I ask you today, what side of history will you stand on? Will you be someone who perpetuates the stigma, who turns away from those in need, or will you be someone who chooses to see the person behind the addiction, the human being who is struggling, who is hurting, but who is also capable of healing? We need to be better. We need to fight back. And how do we fight back? First, we educate. We replace ignorance with understanding. As I stated earlier, addiction is a brain disorder. It alters neural pathways, hijacks survival instincts, and traps people in cycles they cannot escape without help. Would you deny insulin to a diabetic, chemotherapy to a cancer patient? Then why do we deny medication, therapy, or empathy to someone battling addiction? Second, we humanize. Behind every statistic is a story. Behind every relapse is a person who's trying. In my work at RIDUP, I've seen men start the process of rebuilding their lives after decades of addiction. Not because they were strong enough, but because they were seen. Because someone said, I believe in you, and they meant it. Recovery isn't about willpower, it's about connection. Also, we need to challenge the harmful language that keeps people in chains. Words like addict, junkie, crackhead, meth head, these labels strip away individuality along with one's dignity and reinforces the belief that people battling addiction are nothing more than their disease. No more addict, junkie, or clean versus dirty. Words matter. Say, person with a substance use disorder. Say, in recovery. Say, you are not your disease. Third, we advocate. We demand policies that prioritize treatment over punishment. We fight for funding, for sober housing, for job opportunities that don't discriminate against past mistakes. And speaking of past mistakes, we fight for fair sentencing with our criminal justice system. We need to create communities where people feel safe enough to seek help without fear of judgment. And finally, we ignite hope. Hope is oxygen for the soul. I've seen it in the trembling hands of a man sitting in his first meeting, in the tears of someone completing 30 days sober, and the laughter of families reuniting after years of fracture. I have seen individuals rise from rock bottom and reclaim their lives. I have seen individuals, once written off by society, become the very advocates fighting for change. I am one of these individuals. And hope is not just a feeling. It is a force. It is a light that can break through the darkest places. It is the reason so many of us are still standing today. I have seen hope win. So today, I leave you with this. If you are struggling, you are not alone. If you feel like the world has turned its back on you, know that there are people, many people, who believe in you, who want to see you heal, who are ready to stand by your side. And if you are someone who has never personally experienced addiction, I challenge you to take a step forward. Educate yourself. Speak up. Challenge the stigma whenever you see it. Because when we come together, when we replace judgment with understanding, when we stand united in the belief that recovery is possible for everyone, that is when true change begins. Together, we can rewrite the story. Together, we can save lives. Together, we can break the chains of stigma once and for all. Thank you.